Line item budget, annual town meeting, special town meeting, the report of the finance committee, meeting minutes, old business, new business, public access, and adjournment. So, in the line item budget, after reviewing it last week, we only have one account left to act on. It's on page C7 for the police department. And Mr. Freitas,
Yes.
I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, I think if you go to page D23, there's some more detail. In a moment, I'll make a motion to approve the budget as submitted. A few opening comments prior to that. First of all, the chief continues to feel very supported by this committee and by the town, and has formed an initial strong relationship with the new town administrator. So again, the chief understands the limitations of the town's budget, but does recognize that his officers are under stress. A number that this committee has started to follow is the number of outgoing calls. After a very high year in 2021 of about 190 calls, that number dipped down a little bit last year. And through the first 4 months of this year, it's dipped down to about 130, 140 outgoing calls. That number through 4 months is on pace to beat about that same number. So there remains pressure on this team, on these officers. The chief is implementing a number, including with the new sergeant, to allow for some taking some pressure out of the system, and including as part of the recent labor agreement, there are certain mental health benefits and programs for the officers as well. So again, recognizing there is stress in the police community, that the chief understands where we are and is doing what he and his team can do to manage that under the limitations of the budget that we have. Getting into the financials itself, similar to some other departments, much of these costs are driven by the labor agreement, which was, my understanding, voted on, signed, and passed at this Monday's town hall meeting. And so a lot of the data on this page are based upon that, including the salaries. The salaries are up notably because of the increase of the additional sergeant. If you exclude that sergeant, salaries are up approximately 2.6%. And though that sounds very similar to other areas, and it is, there is a very detailed process underneath it. They go officer by officer, position by position, sort of level by level to build up this budget. But the ex-sergeant increase is roughly 2.6%. There are a couple of new items in this year's budget, including the replacement of all of their tasers. Their tasers expire this year, and so this is certainly a liability issue and need to be replaced. There is an additional clothing increase. Again, that is related to the labor agreement that was recently ratified. And then a couple of other smaller costs are up, but again, nothing overly monetarily significant. So if I'll pause here if there are any questions. Other than that, I'll make a motion to move as submitted. Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the...
I got a question. Overtime, just a curiosity.
Yep.
6 point. If we had more, the sergeant, we had a detective. The detective was supposed to take some pressure off to patrol people, free up their time. Shouldn't we see overtime going down, or is it, what's driving that? Have we got more events going on?
Again,
Or?
I think there's a couple of moving pieces in there. The first is the number of calls that we can't handle. The expectation is for us to be able to do that. Though the sergeant will be be picking up shifts, that those there are forced usage for our police officers, and so it will take some of that pressure out of the system. The overtime will likely stay similar to what it has been due to the need.
Okay, because right now it's over, what, 6%, so, okay.
So I'll make a motion.
So having gone through that in the past, many years ago, sitting up and trying to figure it out, so how do you do that? If you assume that you need 2 officers on every shift, just to start there, then, you know, you staff accordingly, but, you know, what happens if someone doesn't show up? So now you gotta always fill that one shift. So the other approach is, well, I have 3 people on here, so if one person calls out for a shift or is on PTO or something, I don't need an overtime because someone's in here, but you've got 3 people on every shift versus 2. And, you know, so sometimes it's hard to get to the point where, you know, I don't need any overtime because I got so many people working every shift that if 1 or 2 don't show up, I've got enough covered with what's left. And then sometimes you run into, hopefully it doesn't happen, but, you know, a major event in town, and now you need all hands on deck, and you're bringing people in off shift to do that.
I'm not saying you
So-
don't need overtime, but if you add more people, and your overtime, because of lack of people, I understand all of that.
So we wanna
and you add
save
more
a few
people,
thousand
overtime
dollars.
should maybe stay flat, not go up, that's 6%.
So I want to save a few dollars in the overtime budget, yet I got to bring on somebody, a couple more people on full-time continuous basis, so the salary lineup goes up. So you got to find the right balance. There's always going to be a need for overtime in there for situations that just can't get covered.
I think Robin wants to say something. Wait, we don't hear a thing in the room. Absolutely nothing. Now, I tried to turn the volume up. It's up, right? You did your magic last time.
Her mic's not on.
Yeah, okay. It's there, it's on. Wait, hit the actual speaker. Yeah, hit that. Now try Robin. Yeah, there we go. All right, thank you.
So, you're exactly correct. There's a tipping point where you have too few officers and your overtime goes up dramatically. You have to consider you have an overtime increase there because you also had salary increases. So the 2.5% that went, or 2.6% that went up in the salary, you also have to remember their overtime numbers are based by the salary. So you would be bound to see some increase in overtime there. And again, the other thing is that if people use all their sick time or all their vacation time, your overtime number is going to be high. But if by chance a lot of guys don't call out, you won't end up using that overtime. Whereas if you overhire, you're paying that money regardless. So it's a tipping point. You don't want to understaff by any stretch. But you find the right balance where you're not forcing, this is the biggest thing, as long as we're not forcing overtime repeatedly, I mean, it can happen in a crisis. As long as you're not forcing overtime and exhausting officers, that's a good thing. A lot of guys actually like the overtime. And the other thing to consider, every new body you hire is a new healthcare enrollment and a new retirement. So when you're calculating, it's not just the salary. Thank you.
Joe, I do have a question, and maybe it'll be Robin to answer. But you had made a statement that their new contract also includes, like, mental health benefits. Do you know, is that, like, part of the town's health plan where you have, like, the teledoc type of thing? We can cover that.
No, I think Kevin's
That-
specific, go ahead, Robin, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one health thing is a mental health checkup that the chief had asked us to encourage our employees to just go get a mental health checkup if they would like because of the stresses that police officers are under. And in trade, we're going to give them just some personal time off. It can't trip overtime. It is not specific to our health plan, but this is something that if we can prevent some of the stress issues that come with the job, or find an officer who may be struggling, that officer is not required to tell us the results of that. This is not a fitness for duty exam that we're sending them for. It's just simply to encourage them to go talk to someone to see if they're getting close to having a little bit of a problem. And if they are, we can intervene before it becomes a problem and we lose time from that officer and everything else.
I know in some health plans that mental health component is part of the offerings. You know, it's not just
Yeah.
going to the doctor and the dentist or the eye doctor.
So our Blue Cross, in fact, I met with our Blue Cross rep today, and all employees, for example, starting in July, and I haven't even announced this yet, I just found out today, are going to get up to $300 for certain therapeutics like yoga, massage therapy, anything that, you have to prove that you went and you have to prove it's reputable. But yeah, they're supporting it up to $300 just on general health and wellness.
Okay. So what I don't have is, I have Joe making a motion, but I don't have a second.
I'll second.
All right, Mike Hager, not Mike Mogul.
No, I will. After your question.
Yeah, well, now is a good time.
So I have a question. Is there a carryover from last year on overtime, or where'd you come in on the budget on overtime?
I don't know this, but I know, and I don't think this year is final, I know for the last several years, the police department has returned a surplus overall. I don't know the details of the overtime.
Robin, would you know that?
Barbara might have the closest number to what's been reconciled this quarter. But I know generally they're running relatively well. I haven't heard any concerns that we're running over.
I think, are you asking what the turnback was in overtime last year?
Yeah.
I think that's the
Where-
question.
Where we're running now is what you're asking?
No, what was the turnback from last year's budget in the overtime?
Barbara,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to log into my work computer to do that, so.
Okay, we'll give you a minute.
I'll be back to you on. Huh?
We'll give you a minute.
I'm gonna have to disconnect from you guys and I'll have to come back, okay?
Okay,
So I'll be back soon.
thank you.
And I'm not sure how, so if you turn money back in, where would it go? Would it go
general
to the
fund.
It goes
general
back to the
fund?
free
Yeah.
cash,
general
yeah.
fund.
It becomes free cash.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
So the unexpended line item budget money comes back and becomes part of that free cash piece.
okay.
Yeah.
If you have a warrant article, warrant articles carry over if there's still the expectation that you're gonna spend the money past the next year. But if you get to a point with the warrant article that, you know, it's done, we didn't need all the money, or, you know, we no longer are gonna do that project or spend the money for the given purpose, then that warrant article gets closed out by Barbara, and that then
You
gets
actually
freed
need to
back.
rescind it.
Yeah.
You need to rescind the authorization. Where is I have somewhere, it was provided to me because I was going to put it in the Finance Committee report, the balancing of the free cash.
Yeah, that would be the spreadsheet she sends us when she certifies the free cash.
No. It talks about what we're going into the annual town meeting with free cash, what we're going to spend and what we're going to end up with.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking where I put that. Oh, there it is.
I saw that somewhere too.
This is it.
A lot of free cash, a lot of turnback comes
Yeah, this-
from, if we have a gap in hiring, when, you know, you have a police officer retires, by the time you get somebody off the list and get the hiring done, it may be a month or two and there's several $1,000s. So, or if you can't find someone to fill, if it takes a while to fill.
We fund the
That's,
highway department for 11 people, and we have 3 vacancies. It takes a while to fill. You've got some.
That's all turned back. Yep.
Okay.
The free cash just gets carried over till next year. do
Well,
they-
what happens
or
at
they
the end of
spend
the
it
year, they
Reconcile?
well, the state certifies it, yeah. It gets reconciled, it goes to the state says, yep, this is the amount.
Okay.
And then that becomes a free cash we're allowed to spend on other.
It's money in the bank,
Yeah.
right, in the savings account to get either turned back in some way or allowed to sit there for future expenditures down the road to soften things up. So, and we're spending on whatever his
Right,
thing's gonna show.
we've used some already for free.
We're using a whole bunch of it to pay for a whole bunch of warrant articles and expenditures in the warrant. Yep.
About 3 million, 2.5 million.
7.082 to 4.1, almost 2.9 now.
Yeah. It goes quickly. That's why you do have to be really prudent.
Let's see, it does
And if
include
you
that.
budget appropriately and relatively tight, there's not a lot of turnback if you do it right. There should be some, because you always want to have a small cushion, a couple of percentage points. But it shouldn't be what you're relying on.
Hi, Barbara, I see you're back.
Yeah, I'm back. Okay. So, in fiscal '22, they spent about 92% of their overtime budget. There was a turnback of a little over $37,000. This year, right now, we are at about 77% of the budget being spent. So, again, I don't know what the turnback will be until we get through the year, but the amounts vary from year to year. And as Robin said, and was discussed, if they have vacancies in the department that can be attributable to higher overtime, just because they have to fill shifts on an overtime basis. So, I can, at year end, provide you information on all the turnbacks.
Sure. We used to get that, but I think that's, once in a,
You've been getting it every year, except for this year, just based on circumstances for me. And I can still get that to you.
Perfect.
And, and hopefully after budget season, we can have that meeting
yeah.
that we didn't get to have this year.
And if I could point out too, and not to rehash something that's already been voted on, when we were talking last week about the date of town meeting, one of the things we look at is how the trends are running, particularly on things like overtime. So Barbara and I looked at where overtime was this year at this point, where overtime finished the prior year, and then we make a determination on if we're in the range this year. The earlier we have to do that in the year, the less accurate the current year would be, because sometimes things are cyclical. Guys take more vacation in a certain quarter, April and June when their kids are out of school. So overtime might go up higher in those quarters. And we might know that, but what happens during the holiday? If we have to start budgeting before December, January, that changes things. So just as an aside, that's one of those little quirky things, because it's a large number that does become important.
All right, any other questions?
Just my,
I never did they, what did they say they got back? I couldn't
Okay,
hear 'em.
so in fiscal year '22, 92% of the overtime budget was spent, and the turnback amounted to $37,000.
Okay.
This year, we're trending, right now, we're at 77% spent to date.
With how many months to go? Is it 2 months to go? When does the?
June 30th is when it ends, so. yeah.
Can I turn this a little louder? I know a couple of people have.
Well, you got to be careful because we'll get feedback, so there's going to be a delicate balance. That's the light, no, it's the bottom one, that's the brightness. The one below it, listen,
Put the brightness at 50.
that's fine, there you go.
Oh, it's at 55, so.
Yeah, there's that kind of thing, yeah. All right, so I have a first and second on the police department. Any other additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's 8-0. Okay, so I do believe that gets us through the line item budget. Excellent. All right, moving on to the annual town meeting warrant. Still a couple things in yellow there, we'll just walk through it. Just double check, Article 1, we voted 8-0. 2, voted 7-0. 3 is 9-0. Debt service, 4 is 9-0. Gravestone restoration, 8-1. 6 is preservation, 6-0-1. Community preservation, senior center renovation. So my understanding was coming into this meeting is that we would have formal numbers tonight because the bid opening was supposed to happen this afternoon. But I've since learned and understand that the bid opening has been delayed, and it's been delayed until next week at some point. So we do not have a number we can act upon. So my idea is that we take no action, put the explanation in there. Once we have a formal number that we can put into as a dollar total in that borrowing language, we can go forward with the substitute motion that we would hand in at the annual town meeting, and that's how we would explain it.
What's the timing involved, Kevin, now as far as getting the books out?
The book's going to the printer next week.
Okay.
I'm going to try and get stuff done and over with by that point.
So you're looking to replace the $1.78 million number with perhaps a slightly different number?
Yeah, with whatever the real number's going to be.
can I just interject on that? So the number of the 1.78 is not going to change.
Yeah, I know.
That is, right, and I just want to be clear, because that's all the vote is about. I mean, the
No.
11.4 was voted before.
Right, but it could be lower.
It could, well, the 1.78,
Yeah.
so, but you're borrowing up too. If it's lower, we just won't spend it.
Yeah, but that's generally not how the practice has been. We give you the number.
No, I understand, but in a situation like this, if you wanted to take some action on it, I mean, I just want to remind everyone, because there seems to be confusion, not necessarily amongst here, but with people in the public. that are watching, there seems to be confusion that this is all part of the whole borrowing, and it's very separate. If the project didn't happen, this money would just sit there for CPC. This is only, and again, I'm saying this more because there's been some questions with the public. This is just the CPC money that's being discussed. So I just
Right.
want to clarify that because it seems like there's just a little confusion out there.
But it is part of the whole project. It goes into the total cost of the project. You can't say it's completely separate.
It does, but as a vote, it is the vote of whether or not to support the 1.7 and change that CPC agreed to. The project vote itself, if we had to get more money for the project, that would have to go back to the public if that was the direction it went. For example, if there was ever a change in the borrowing or free cash or whatever, if anybody even wanted to do that, that would all have to go back to the public. Because we can't just arbitrarily spend more money. This number is being voted separately from the original project because the public had not seen this number. It was when we saw the overage, we also realized there was a percentage of money that could come from CPC, and now we have another source, and we're bringing that to the public.
So
But
when
this
the
is a
original...
very clear use of money. This is, because it is CPC, it's very, very guided.
Okay, so I understand that completely, and you've explained that to us before. So when the original request came in at the expected cost of 11.4, where was this $1.7 million then? Why wasn't that used to lower the original cost?
Well, as I've said to you all, I don't necessarily agree with how the whole number had been packaged up front to begin with, because it really had not been planned or designed. The reality was, I think there was a presumption that, sure, the whole project could have been done there, but to be honest with you, I would still, let's say the whole thing could have been done for 11.4, but $1.7 million should be historic renovation money. Why would we borrow that and put it on a debt exclusion? We would have borrowed up to 11.4. I would have argued take 1.7 out of that if we could have done it for the whole amount. If the bids come in tomorrow at 11, let's say for the sake of argument, the bids come in tomorrow at 11.4 million or next week, I would still argue that the 1.7 from CPC for historic renovation is still a solid number. We would never put that on the taxpayer and borrow that money if we didn't have to. Then you'd only be doing a debt exclusion for 9.6 or whatever. My math isn't good, but
there's
9.5.
actually nothing in the recommendation that's in front of us that says it's coming from the CPC. It's actually just got the generic borrowing language in it. It doesn't say anything in there that is coming from CPC funds.
Isn't the general law chapter preface, the one that
Yes.
CPC, ties to the CPC?
Doesn't it say historic renovation on it?
No,
It specifically says that. Hold on.
not in the motion, it doesn't.
Look at the article to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund, historic fund balance.
That's not the language that you're asking us to recommend as the borrowing language. That's just the generic borrowing language.
The borrowing language in the motion was given to us by bond counsel. So in the motion, to see if the town will appropriate, it said Community Preservation Senior Center renovation.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the language we were given. But the whole thing was clearly CPC voted and funded, because it's a recommendation of CPC.
So the motion should say that, though.
Well,
Because
I
the
mean,
way
if
the
it's
motion is written now,
We could get,
if the
Yeah, I could get-
CPC rescinded their 1.78 million, you're now including the 1.78 million to the 11.4 just to go out for borrowing. That's the way it's written. right now.
no.
That's not what you
can't
want
that.
to do. I'm just
No,
telling you
because-
what's written.
Well, this is exactly what was given to us by legal
Okay.
counsel. This
Can I-
money was voted.
Wait, Barbara's
Barbara,
got
go ahead.
Yeah, so chapter 44B is the community preservation statute. We
Okay.
are borrowing the funds under the community preservation statute. And I would say, and again, the article, the way it's written, and the motion the way it's written are very specific, written by bond counsel
Right.
to allow us to be able to borrow. So you can't tinker with that language.
No, but thank you for
Additional-
clarifying, because, I mean, the general law and chapter stuff is kind of, you have to know specifically.
well,
So you're saying that...
Again,
that-
well, Kevin, it goes to what I say every year at some point, is you have to trust that what we're putting forth is what we're trying to do. And so that, if you look up that section, chapter 44B, it is directly related to community preservation. Additionally, I would agree with what Robin said earlier. You know, there is no difference in moving this article forward to fund a portion of the senior center project out of community preservation funds versus the way the article was moved forward with the 11 point whatever million dollars. We did not have a specific amount of money known at that point either when that article was brought forward. So, you know, we can, you know, I don't know why things weren't done the way they're trying to be done now, as far as using a portion of the community preservation funds towards this borrowing. I agree with Robin 100%. That's an available source that then takes a burden off the taxpayer to have their tax bill go up for the full portion of the debt exclusion. So I think it is a very prudent way to borrow these funds. And to me, it makes a lot of sense, regardless of the fact that we don't know the bottom line cost of the project yet. Based on the estimates that were put forward, the maximum, based on those estimates, that could be spent out of community preservation money is the number that you are, is the amount of the money that's in the motion for this article. If the project goes down, then to Robin's point, that number will have to be looked at again, and the distribution will have to be figured out as to what that cost is that is allowable under CPC funds. It is very specific what the money can be spent on, and we're going to have to adhere to that, because we're not going to be able to borrow money under that statute that isn't allowed under the Community Preservation Act.
Oh, I completely understand, and you've helped clarify that, but I think I had another question.
So then, for me, by analogy, then, is this similar to what we presented as alternative funding for example, Cooper Road, where the Finance Committee recommended that we use chapter, in taking no action on that particular article, no action because we want to split the amount needed, Chapter 90 funds, and then free cash? Isn't this, by analogy, the same thing, that we want to use CPC funds as opposed to funding it through a debt exclusion or something else? By analogy, not the same thing, but by analogy, we're looking for a different way to fund it through the CPC funds as opposed to a debt exclusion. And this Community Preservation Committee has already determined that this is appropriate, and council said that it could be drawn from Chapter 44. I want to make sure I understand it.
Yes, yes, it is analogous, and I think, again, it's looking at different resources of funding. We have historic, you know, preservation money sitting there, or that we can borrow or have access to through CPC, that very reasonably and appropriately can be used that way. If we were not going to use that, yes, the project is higher than expected, the debt exclusion would be higher, we'd have to go back to the taxpayer to have a higher debt exclusion for the whole project. Why would we do that when we have another possible funding source that will not increase the person's tax bill a penny? Now, if the project were to go over on non-CPC type things, then we have to go back to the taxpayer.
So, you all set?
Yes.
Kevin, if I may. So I'm comfortable that this article is clear that it's 1.7 million, it's from CPC. It's a specified sum of money. I think we got here not because, hey, we can use CPC to pay part of the costs versus 11 million. I think we got here of the 11 million isn't going to be enough, based on what we know now. Here's a way to get some more money. Hopefully between these two articles, we've got enough to get it covered. I guess my concern is, you know, we go marching into the town meeting, we bring this article, hey, all right, it's another 1.7, and we come up a little short, and we have to go back a third time for some more money, assuming bids come in higher than this, and we kind of, you know, tire out town meeting from how many times you're going to overrun the project and do whatever else. So to me, I almost feel that, you know, it'd be an easier sell, an easier way to get a focus if we had a better feel for where the costs were coming, to say, hey, we're asking for this now, but we got to come back for X million more, or we're asking for this now, it's gonna be enough. And town meeting, it can make a story, because I don't want to get to a point where we bring this one forward and we got to go back for X more after a third time, and they finally say, enough is enough, forget it.
Yeah.
Stop the project, right?
Agreeing with you, this is a question. I believe then this article would still go as written today. There would be an additional article presented to ask for additional funding.
Yes.
So it's non-related to this, but we're also expecting and
And
encouraging that that number be known by town hall and be brought at the same time. But again, it doesn't necessarily affect this article or this motion.
And we go forward with this, and we don't kind of have the number, it's like, well, do you think this is enough? We don't know. If you go forward and say, this is the number, hey, we got some bid openings, we're gonna need another 100,000, another million, another 2, people can make a more informed decision on the overall piece. That's what I'm kind of ready.
Yeah, I wonder, but Robin, I'm sorry for interrupting, but even if the bids come in lower, we're still gonna ask for this 1.8.
And I'm okay with that, because that then says, okay, we got more than enough money appropriated, and as Robin and Barbara said, if we got 14 million appropriated and we only need 12, they're only gonna spend the 12 and use the appropriate funding buckets to fund whatever they need.
Yeah, I guess that's right. But to Kevin's point, we really are increasing the overall payment from town, regardless of the funding methodologies. We're allowing for 1.8 of additional costs for the senior
We
center.
would have put in place the ability to spend, let's round it to 14 million instead of 12.
Yeah,
If we only need 13 or 12 or 11, the fact that we authorize the expenditure up to that amount doesn't mean it's going to get all spent. They'll spend what they need, and the rest will not be borrowed and carried forward.
understood.
I got a question. So there's only one design. I mean, we always say, spending's like it's our money. If you go to build a house and if the contract, you want this and that, a contractor says it's gonna be more, then you say, well, I can't afford it, so eliminate the bathroom, eliminate the jacuzzi, let's fit within the budget. So if we were a shortfall, rather than going back to the people, isn't there a way to look at the design and say, okay, what are alternatives to the design?
I think
That's
that
usually
they
where you
have-
get your money and then you design. You don't design and say, well, now let's find the money if we can. If not, we'll just go back to the people. That seems to be a little bit backwards, and, to me, anyway.
And that would be the first step. It came in at 14.2, we only have 14. Can we find a way to stay within the budget, cut a few things out, right? That would be the process the committee would go through, I would assume.
Doesn't sound like it.
But the thing that Robin had said in previous meetings is that if it went above that, that it wouldn't move forward at all. If it went to
Well,
16 or 17.
I don't know that they would necessarily, I won't speak for, but I would say, I don't think the committee would stop there. I think they'd evaluate it, figure out what they could do, and they have the option to come back and say, hey, it's a $16 million project, are we still supporting this at this level? Here's what we need, let's move forward. Town could decide, that's too much, or fine, it's still worth it, let's go. Or, I don't see that if the number comes in higher than this, that's an automatic ground to a halt. There was a commitment made to the seniors to give them an improved senior center, what the options are, people are gonna have to figure out if the bids come in higher than what we've already funded, and see what we can do to get the extra money or shift to a different project
So-
if need be.
So Robin, what did the OPM tell you about the concerns with the bid? Why was it delayed?
I think Charlie is there, part of the thing, the HVAC came in a little higher than expected. There are some addendums that they're working on. So I really can't say what those numbers are gonna come in at on the 26th. Charlie may have a better sense, but I'm not sure that he will. But again, in reality, what happens then is when we can consider what the next move is, but it's not just me making that or the building committee. It's gonna be a board decision. If it's more money, it's certainly gonna be a town meeting decision. If you're talking 100 or 200,000, certainly I'm sure they'll be able to trim and make it work. If you're talking 2 or 3 million, they're probably not. And then the question is, if you cut the project by $2 million, is it worth at that point the money that it is? But that's a whole separate discussion that really, with all due respect, doesn't have a ton to do with that 1.7 tonight. That's a separate issue. If those bids come in super high, we might even say, the article goes forward, but we're never gonna use that 1.7 because we're not gonna do the project. We just don't know.
Yeah, but you
I
can
know
get a
Charlie-
sense from the
Charlie is
questions
there.
being asked if we're even in the ballpark. I mean, I was on
I-
the,
No, you can't.
Yeah,
when we did this
I think
project.
Charlie may have a better sense of that, but I don't really think we know yet. I will tell you, HVAC projects have come in
Well, I don't, I,
dramatically
see,
higher.
you keep saying Charlie, you're talking to Charlie Blanchard?
Yeah, I'm chairman of the building.
Yes. I
Okay,
believe-
so
isn't he
that
there?
would have been helpful to know. Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought he was sitting in front of you. I may be wrong.
I'd be happy to address some of the questions.
Yeah, please, come on. Identify yourself, please.
Sure. Charlie Blanchard, 26 Foxborough Road. I'm the chairman of the building committee for the senior center. A couple of things to discuss here. As far as your question about the price of the cost of the project, I mean, there was a feasibility study done over 3 years ago. And basically, the dollar estimate for the project that was passed 2 years ago at the town meeting and then at the debt exclusion was based on that. There was a contingency in there. But then we faced COVID and we faced increases of 20%. So we had a first, schematic design based on, the program. They came up with a plan. We had an estimator look at it, and it was really high. I mean, it was over $15 million. And so the architect went back and they reviewed everything. They changed the concept. They reduced the size of the addition. And twice we've gone through things to do value engineering to try to move it down. Last fall, we came up with the design that we feel is the minimum for the project that the town thinks they're going to get based on the vote they had before. It meets all the program requirements. It meets the square footage. It's not as elaborate, certainly. It's not as, it meets the required. The decision also was that anything less than that wouldn't be the same kind of a project we were talking about to get the square footage the program needs and the space we need. So that's why we're going forward with this. As far as the community preservation funds, do you have any other articles in this warrant for the community preservation?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, generally, that is a separate law, I think, as everyone has explained here. And basically, it's set up because the funds are already there. They're committed from the surcharge and from the fees on registry fees. And the Community Preservation Committee is supposed to solicit proposals for the use of this money for historic preservation, open space, community housing, and so forth. The three different things. Recreation is another one. And there's a certain percentage that has to be spent, 10% in each of those areas each year. And they are supposed to then come up with some ideas, have a public hearing on it. And the article that they present really should be the specific vote they took, which I was at the meeting, and I'm pretty sure they voted $1.78 million for, out of the historic preservation funds for this project. And that's the article that should be voted on. I mean, it would be the same thing if it was for, community housing or a rec field or whatever it is. I mean, it is for that field, and it's that amount of money for it. So that really should be the vote. I mean, it should have the amount in there because they're recommending that amount. They could have recommended less than that. Just to back up a little bit, when we realized how high the price was going to be, we looked at the alternative of having community preservation funds, and similar to what was used for this building and the building across the street. A lot of that was supported by community preservation funds that allowed the project to go forward. And we asked the architect to review anything that would qualify, because one of the reasons we chose this architect was that they had a strong experience in historic preservation. When we first interviewed architects, they talked about the idea that, the whole concept has to be to not take away from the historic building, but to support it and not overwhelm it. The original design that came in the feasibility study was adding another massive building behind the historic school building, which was already added to in the last renovation 15 years ago or so. So their concept to build, something that joins it and then is a separate structure outside is what attracted us to choose this particular architect. So we felt confident that when we were looking for historic preservation funds, they would be good to identify all these things, and they certainly did. They went through and they identified all the things that within the Community Preservation Act, the law that's there, would qualify for historic, preservation. So that's how the $1.78 million. We were very happy that they decided to vote that much for it. So what would happen to the other question? I mean, if the price came in lower, say it came in 20% lower for some reason, they'd have to look really at those components that were being funded by this 1.78 million. If we're, for example, reducing something, let's say, one of the things was here, and it was to help preserve this historic stairway in front of it. If the changes got rid of that, then that money couldn't be used for that, anymore. So there is a limit to, what you can do with that money. I mean, it is there. The community preservation has voted for the full amount. And really, I think, from my experience has been, and I've worked in communities that have the Community Preservation Act, I mean, you are voting only on yes or no. Do you want to spend this money from that source in the community preservation on that project? When I was in Williamstown, I was an interim town manager there, they had a very active community preservation committee. And they met several times, and they had all kinds of projects, and they debated them through all the things. They've used a lot of things. And every time there was an article, it is, per the law, it's that amount of money for that use, yes or no. That's what the town has asked for. It doesn't tie into whether or not the project is going to go forward. We had one project out there where they decided to use a significant amount of money to restore a historic church, which was still a church, but it had community use. It was a nonprofit. It qualified for the use. And, that money goes to it, regardless of what they were going to do with the rest of the money to fix the church or to add to it or anything else. The only vote the town really had was, do you want to take $450,000 and apply it to this renovation of this church or preservation of this church? And that's really what we're asking for here. Just the community preservation has had their meetings, they voted, they've recommended the $1.78 million for this project, and that's it. It should really be that.
What was the bare bones bid that came in? Because that was a nice process. I'm impressed with that. A good process. But what was when you got done with the process, what was the bare bones bid that we first got? Was it 11.4 million, or was it, what was it?
No, we haven't got any bids. I mean, these are all just estimates.
What was the estimate then?
Right, well, the last estimate we had was that it's roughly 9.7 million, 10 million construction. I mean, the 11.4 million that we have, voted and approved already, and through the debt exclusion, includes, the architect's fees, all the peripheral stuff. So the construction bid, I think it was 9.7 million is what they're talking about being there. So that's what we hope the bids will come in at, but we'll see.
Charlie, can I ask I appreciate the background and explanation again, but the 1.8 is contingent upon your understanding of the project going forward. This money would not be spent if the project didn't go forward.
It couldn't be, right. It could not be spent. In other words, the project has to be a project in order to spend it. Similar to that example I gave in Williamstown, I mean, if they decided not to do the project, they wouldn't be handing them the money to hold on to do something else. I mean, that's just the way it is, yeah. So this money could only be spent for the money needed to do that work on the project that qualifies for historic preservation funds.
Right.
So it's an interesting situation in that this assumes the project is going forward if this article is recommended to be passed. There is some question as to whether or not it's feasible to assume that based upon where we are in the bid process. However, what we have now is an approved project to be funded.
Yeah, at 11.4 million.
So even if bids come in at 11.4 million, we have the money from the other article. What I hear Charlie saying, this article says we don't need an extra 1.7, but we're going to fund the 11.4 million, 1.7 from CPC, and the rest from the other end. Kind of like where Lee was going with our Chapter 90 versus free cash
needed.
for roads.
If needed.
Right?
Well, again-
I think we got here because there's a belief that the project's going to cost more and we need more money.
Yeah,
Well, actually,
I think town meeting would like to, should have, an understanding of what's coming, but I understand what you're
And I
you're
think the
talking about use of these
clarification,
funds, and even if it's not enough and we need a little bit more, at least you're setting it aside now, and, if we need a third bite, so be it.
yeah, if I could even on that, just, to expand on that a little bit. In other words, any significant additional amount of money, let's say we needed like $500,000 or $1 million worth of, free cash money, that can't be done without a whole other process in another town meeting. So the bids we go out for, most likely would not, still be any good. You'd have to reconsider what you do with the whole project. If, however, though, it comes in and there's a few $100,000 needed, there's always the opportunity that the Board of Selectmen would have to use ARPA funds, for something like that. So there's that possibility, or if it came a little bit over, there could be some value engineering and maybe reduce some of the other things, like, whatever it might be, maybe a different kind of a roof structure, or maybe some other things that would save money but still stay within the bids that we get from the general contractor. But the other question, becomes like, if this money is voted, if the townspeople decide that, yes, we know we have community preservation money, we want to use it for this project, if the project doesn't go forward, there's really no harm. I mean, the money can't be spent. I mean, ultimately, they would probably rescind the vote and put the money back in. I mean, they're not spending any of it until the project is actually built, and then, the money is borrowed, and then that becomes part of the pay.
Oh, Kathy, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question on, because the community preservation funds have to be spent on certain things, is the bid crafted in such a way that that the historic part is going to be X amount, and then the addition will be...
Well, that's how they came up with the 1.78 million. I mean, they took, the functions, or the process, or the design, or the work that is being done. They assigned a value to it based on the way they evaluate, and estimate everything. And they indicated that, yes, that particular work does qualify for... The Community Preservation Act is pretty specific on guidelines as to what the various monies can be spent for in each category. And it's particularly strong in historic preservation because, it's an issue that, people can define, and they're really trying to preserve, historic features. So yes, it can be, and it would be. In other words, it wouldn't be that, like, there's one bid out to do this one thing, but in other words, the architect would certainly be able to say that this work for this part of it came in at this is what they're paying for it, and that is for that function that is fundable from community preservation.
I would expect your bids are not a lump sum, here's a dollar amount.
Right.
You'll get that, but behind it is, you'll have a schedule of values that your architect has broken down into very detailed, pieces, and you'll know, preservation historic windows, line 37
When you
is
have
X
millwork,
dollars,
you'll
and
get
millwork is this. So you'll
definition
have
of the
that
building.
breakout and be able to pull
It
it.
will.
I think that's how they get to the 1.78 million. They would have had to have had that.
That's exactly how they
That's
got to it, by
estimate, and
defining.
then the bids will
what it would be.
reflect actual costs.
I guess,
And that, if for some odd reason that part came in less, which is usually unlikely when it's historic preservation, then we wouldn't be able to spend that much then, right?
Right, I mean, the whole,
I mean, it's pretty unlikely on historic.
and again, it's not really one part, it's a series of things. I mean, it's the outside, pointing of all the brick instead of just what needs to be done. It's replacing, the windows. The windows aren't historic. They were replaced 15 years ago or whatever with something that isn't historic. The new windows that are going to go in are more historic. They're in keeping with the original design. And so they design with different type of molding and different type of panels, whatever the window panes. The
mullions.
And the same thing for, like, the top window in the peak of it, it's being more restored to what it was, before, not having just a little vent, but it is, a window. So
We're gonna do the same thing like we do with the library. You keep the face, and then you, behind it, and so you keep the historical look, and then behind it, you put in the more modern architecture, right?
Right, and interesting, on the library, when we did, that addition, I mean, you were really matching, the original building with everything else. I mean, I don't know how closely you've looked at it, but.
Too
In
close.
the original building, the sills are really marble or stone, and in the addition in the back, they're actually precast concrete, but they're very high quality, and the architect made a big thing out of making sure they matched. And same with the brick. I happened to be on the board of selectmen at the time, and there was a big deal even matching that brick, so, I mean, historic preservation can be a pretty big thing.
okay. I have a question. So one thing that helped clarify me is that this is actually borrowing taking place under the CPA Act, versus the town's borrowing authority in general.
This has to be paid through CPA funds.
But I have a what-if question, kind of following up what I think what Joe said, or it may have been Mike, that, so if this comes in, we get 11.4, we add the 1.8, and we need another $1 million. So for the first 11.4, you go to a town meeting, you get the authorization of the town meeting to go for the 11.4. It has to go to an election to go into the Prop 2.5 override. And it passed at the election as well, so now we have $11.4 million fully authorized and outside the limits of Prop 2.5. We're going to add this is a different borrowing. But if we needed that extra $1 million now, we go to the town meeting, we say we need $1 million, the town meeting authorizes it. Would the fact that it was already passed as a project in an election, would it need to go back to an election, or does the town meeting vote end?
No, it wouldn't, because the
So,
debt exclusion doesn't have a number to it. So in other words, if town meeting voted more money for it, it would be debt excluded.
automatically, so there's no chance to go to election, so someone who,
I mean, you're really stepping ahead here, Kevin, because,
what's the funding
first of all, it's a
mechanism?
question of
Maybe we use
whether or not
free
they
cash for
would
the
want
extra
another
million,
million.
right?
Huh?
Right.
We don't know what the next funding mechanism is
but
gonna be.
I understand, but you didn't, if it's gonna be borrowed, well, let's say it's $10 million extra just to get the free cash out of the equation, so you need to go borrow. If it passes town meeting, there's no subsequent election like there was the
So-
first time.
So what? I mean,
Well, no, because, you've been at the town
I mean,
meeting.
people have to
Things are
understand
different
that when
now
they
with the
vote.
electronic clickers.
I don't know
I
about
mean, Kevin, we are seem to be getting a little bit away from what the question here is, I believe.
Well, I mean, it's still a what-if someone asked it at
I
town
mean,
meeting.
first of all, can you really think that if we thought this building was going to cost us 11.4 million, and now it might cost 14 million, if it came in at 25, do you think people are really going to go back and vote for this?
No,
For
I
this
don't.
building?
But I
don't
was
know.
just trying
I
to
really
get free
don't
cash
either.
out of it.
So, I mean, I really think the reason we decided to move forward with this thing, when we got the support of the Community Preservation, Committee, we felt pretty confident that we would have a source of these funds, to be in the bid package we think we're in. And, that's where we are with this thing. I mean, and we will have, real bid, proposals, contracts ready to sign with a contractor, ready to move forward in a particular time frame. And, they're not going to say, okay, well, wait a minute, we want to go back to town meeting, and this bid will still be good for a year from now. That isn't the way it works. I mean, we're hoping that the bids will be competitive enough. We have a good pool of contractors. They're not huge. I mean, it's a small project, but several of these have been, I've worked with two of them on different projects, and, they're very competitive. They're very good contractors, and, we're hoping that we'll get good competitive bids and be able to move forward with this bid. But again, it certainly requires the approval of the town meeting to get that 1.78 million. And if there's a small amount needed to be adjusted either through changes in the design, it would have to be done in a really short period of time, because you only have a certain number of days that a contractor's bid can be accepted and move forward. So,
Hey, can I interrupt as well on this? You would all have, everybody would have another bite of the apple before it even went to a town meeting. Because the selectmen, we haven't even brought them into this discussion, they would have to agree to want to put it back on a town meeting warrant. Then it would have to go back to you all in a year from now, or a special meeting, or whenever we did this. Then it would go to town meeting. So it's not like arbitrarily, it doesn't go through this full process again, because you all might say next time, you know what, we're not even putting this back out there. We're not going to vote for it. You could put it on town meeting, but we don't support it, paying 1 penny more. So it's not, like Charlie said, we're like 10 steps ahead. This is all about 1.7 million of CPC tonight. And the answer to the public, if that question comes up, is yes, if we had to go back, or if the board chose to go that direction, because again, the board has to put this, or it can be petitioned to be put on the floor, but it would go through a whole process all over again like this. So the public would absolutely have voice, as would all of these committees.
So I still think, since I raised it earlier, that town meeting, even I as a voter, would really feel a little bit more comfortable having a better feel for what the number is going to be. Hopefully bids do come in and we
Well,
can
that- yeah.
address that. versus, here it is, and who knows what the final cost is. We'll come back and let you know. That's a little weaker story for them. We get into the funding mechanism and the impact on prior votes. That's an important matter, but, for down the road, when we see if there is an incremental amount, and what funding mechanisms are, and what the impacts of approving that additional funding at the time should happen there.
I think that's just important for people to realize, though, that it won't be subject to a second vote. So if you're against it and you don't show up at the town meeting, you're not going to have a chance at a poll to vote it down.
Yep.
Would
people be okay if I made a motion?
Oh, yeah,
just to move
absolutely.
along? So unfortunately, we're going to have to read the whole thing
I'll
here.
read it if you want.
I'll do it. I'm just going to read this here, so all you got to do is copy and paste. So
Read this one here.
all right. So I'll make a motion.
Yes. Oh, yeah, just so the record, we're using 05 ATM warrant FinCom. That's the file.
I'll make a recommendation that the town appropriates the additional sum of $1,780,000 to pay costs of designing, engineering, constructing, equipping, and furnishing a renovated and expanded senior center to be located at 480 Main Street, and for the payment of any and all incidental and related costs, including but not limited to demolition and site preparation, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7-1, Chapter 44B, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore. The Board of Selectmen and any other appropriate officials of the town are authorized to apply for federal, state, or private grants, enter into any agreements, and execute all documents, including contracts, for a term in excess of 3 years as may be necessary to effectuate the purposes of this article, and to accept any gifts or grants provided to the town for such purposes.
Second.
Hang on. Thank you, Mike, for reading that. We'll just call it approved as written to this point. So it's MH and Joe Freitas, seconds. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? 9-0.
Very good, thank you very much. Thank you.
Charlie, how many square feet are they looking to?
Is it what, 10,000?
7,000,
7,000?
yeah. Addition,
Addition, so,
plus the renovation of the existing building,
yeah,
yeah.
very good. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Charlie, I didn't realize you were on the building committee when you were just
I
going.
I'm sorry.
He's built every building in town.
All right, thanks, take care.
Thank you.
All right, so that is now Article 7. Article 8 was 8-1. Article 9, 9-0. 10, 8-1. Pedestrian bridge, 7-2. Housing consultant, 801. Civil War Memorial Art, 900. 14, Gold Stars, 90. Article 15, town budget. There's another one that needs an action tonight, now that we've actually finished all the items in the line item budget. So Article 15, town budget, literally, that's just approving the line item budget, the one that looks like an Excel spreadsheet, the page I didn't hold up. So,
Is this a approve as written
Yes,
motion?
very
I
simple.
Make a motion that we recommend town meeting approve the article as written.
all right, do I have a second?
Second.
Kathy. Any additional questions or comments? Here's your last chance. Okay, all those in favor? 9-0. All right, I'm sorry to make everyone roll through this, but I want to make sure that I have everything right, because I don't have a lot of time and options to have you guys contribute into this. From here, it pretty much becomes, this is what I think needs to be done, and it gets done. All right, so we take that, that's acted. All right, road construction, repairs and maintenance is at 8-0. Public Access Department, we voted 8-0. STA, 8-0. Betterment Committee, 7-0-1. Capital Improvement Committee, we offered it amended, and I did add an explanation of the reason why we amended the article. And so that's been added to the text, so.
I'm
you
sorry, I
feel
wasn't
free-
here last week. Did the field funding fencing make it in there or not?
No, it made it into the smaller reduced amount of $2,830. So, just so if you have a chance to read the explanation, but I tried to take it from my discussion and put it in there. Article 21, crane truck is 8-0. Front end loader purchase is 8-0. Ambulance stabilization was 8-0. Capital, 8-0. Fire vehicle stabilization, 8-0. OPEB, 8-0. Revaluation is 9-0. Article 28, the farmer's market revolving fund is, we voted 7-0. Spending limits for the revolving funds, 7-0. The water department bill was 6-1. Sewer department was 7-0. Article 32, sewer project betterments, 9-0. Inflow infiltration study, Article 33, 9-0. Article 34, stormwater is 9-0. Tree removal and maintenance, 35, I have 9-0. Cooper Road culvert replacement, ours is no action, and there's an explanation box in there explaining why we took no action. It's not exactly paged right, but I'll take care of that at another point. Falls Road culvert replacement, we voted 8-1 in favor. Establishment of disabilities, 9-0. Map regarding floodplain, 2/3 vote. We've got to scroll down, that's 9-0. Steward's water sewer assessment management plan, 7-0. Sewer lining, 7-0. What, did I miss one there? Sewer main replacement, I did. Article 42 is 7-0.
Kevin, at least on this one, I'm looking on my phone, the words Article 42 are off-center.
Oh, that must be your phone, because it looks good here.
Okay, good enough.
Okay, thank you for pointing it out, though. Okay, Article 43, the water tank maintenance for various locations, 6-0-1. Concrete tank repair at the wastewater, 7-0. Article 45, OSV water line, 7-0. 46, amendments to the Sturbridge Charter was 4-2. I'm going to try and see what that does to the cost of the book to add the as attached as an appendix, so people can see it without having to go somewhere. So that goes through all that. Street sweeper purchase is 6-1.
So Kevin, ideally, you'd like to give them the whole charter, which is many pages, probably bigger than our warrant here, with all the changes in there. If that becomes too much, can you just give them the sections that have the changes marked and leave everything else out? It kind of takes it out of context a little bit, but if you, okay.
That, I think that would be much harder for me to do,
Okay.
because that would, I don't have a lot of,
Probably time-consuming.
yes, incredibly time. See, you've done this, sir, so you know what goes
Yes.
into that. All right, so that gets us through the ATM. So we voted everything, and everyone's kind of in concurrence with the votes. All right, special town meeting warrant is Article 40.
Did you go back to the annual,
Oh, yeah.
first page on the annual?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Special town meeting warrant. So Article 40, snow and ice, we voted a specific figure of $31,868.99, 7-0. Article 41, paid, and you should see summaries now for these articles where there weren't summaries before. Article 41, unpaid bills of a previous year. This one is from free cash. This was for $7,152.04, and we voted 7-0, and that's paying a bill from National Grid. Article 42 is unpaid bills for a previous year from the Sewer Reserve Fund. That's for the total of $58,192.72. I don't know why that's blue. Okay, I took care of that. We voted 7-0. And then the explanation is added there, and it's the $58,192 going to National Grid. 43, the opioid program was supported 8-0. Article 44, to free cash to the school department was supported 8-0. So, anyone with questions or comments related to the special town meeting warrant? All right, so we're done with that too. And so now it gets us to the report of the Finance Committee. And the first section of that is usually just the general, like, here's what's in the warrants, what's in the line item budget, here's how we look, here's how we see where we're at financially. I have not written that yet. I plan to write it and send it out, and I hopefully get some responses back, yay or nay, because I know, Joe, you made some really good comments in last year's thing and helped me clarify some of the points I was trying to make. And so then the next thing is moving into, usually we have the issues for your consideration section, and you all got a whole series of emails with different issues for consideration. And I don't know if anyone feels any of those things are worthy of trying to discuss and highlight and bring to voters' attention. I'll just try and go through the different emails. Forget where I sent out the first one because I screwed up from Larry. All right, so the first one would have been from Larry, dated May 6th at 6:04 PM. And there is a policy on technology foresight. Then there was analyze grant consequences and acting in the face of outside factors. That was 3 there. And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to put this all together and make it a little more cogent for us this evening. I know there was another one too, Larry, that you had about a new...
Buttress service with training.
Yeah, exactly, public service with training, yeah.
Correct,
That
public
was the
service, yeah.
fourth one.
Didn't we do that?
Go ahead.
Didn't we make that recommendation last year about supporting some training for, public officials, new and old? Is this a repeat of last year's message, or are we building?
Actually, I don't think it is. I think we went 2 years, at least, with no section issues. We deemed both of those years vanilla, was the term. I don't recall ever a training essay on,
I have that somewhere.
at all, you know.
I actually have a document, so we're going to find it since I was on the committee that has every issues for your consideration we ever did. I have to figure it out, but you're right. Last year, we only had one issue, and the year before, we didn't have any that we brought to townspeople.
Well,
Last year's one issue was Eye to the Future, and talked about growth in general.
yeah, right.
All right, so I'm trying to, I know Ken sent a bunch of consideration things, and I had one that you had commented on, because you saw it done in Charlton or some other community.
Well, it's in the community I work in too, they have it.
They do?
Electricity irrigation, yeah.
Is that what it's called?
There's probably 40 or 50
There's
communities
quite a
that have
few
had that
in
for
the state
decades, yes.
that have
Yep.
it. We do it with probably 10 others. Where I am, in Franklin County.
So it's like a regional agreement? Is that how it works?
No, so,
No, they all have to agree, they're all part of the agreement, but they can pick and choose basically from various bids.
so since electric deregulation came about in the late 1990s,
Yeah.
there was this part that the DPU allows where a community can aggregate. So instead of all of us going out and trying to pick our own supplier and try to understand the system, there's a process where the community can go out. They usually hire a firm, there's a handful of them out there, that runs a process that would go out and get bids for whatever period of term you need from suppliers, and then all residents in town who have not chosen their own competitive supplier and are just stuck on whatever the utility rate is that changes every 6 months would be enrolled in this competitive program. And the belief being that by going through that and aggregating thousands of households versus 1 or 2 here and there, you get a better price, and the supplier will know any new customer coming into Sturbridge would be put on their supply. for whatever the remaining period of term is at whatever that price is. And, maybe it's a 1-year term, maybe it's a 2-year term at some agreed number, and then you kind of redo the process after that. So if you believe in the competitive marketplace, the pooling of all these resources to drive a competitive price, there's people who can help you set up a program, explain it to people in town so they know what's happening. You do, if you get the flyer and this is what goes on, and then we're going to move you from National Grid Supply over to, whoever the town selected for this period of time, you do have the right to leave that. You're not stuck. You can go find your own supplier and leave, or do whatever else. So, there's probably at least 50 communities, if not more, that run these programs there.
I just saw that my father-in-law was on it in Webster, and it was like, my wife's like, how come we don't do that here? And it's like, okay.
Process. I mean, you have
Yeah, he
to
was
go
saying
through
it
the
was more complicated
GPU.
than I thought.
We've had some trouble trying to figure out how the solar
thought
credits
you
work
looked
back, let
into it,
alone
too.
do whatever else.
Go ahead, Rob.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so we did look into it. I've looked into municipal aggregation, and it is doable. It is somewhat complicated. It involves a lot of approval by the state of whatever plan or whatever you choose to do. The biggest resistance you tend to get from the public is we are automatically taking them away from their energy supplier and putting them into one we choose. You have to realize this is all about green energy. So the rate is better the more we buy into a company that's using more green energy to produce the electricity. So if you go with a company that's at the minimum 40% green, your discount isn't going to be much more. If you go to a company that's getting all their source from, let's say, 100% green, then you're going to get a better rate. People aren't always sure what they want. In the past, when I've worked in other communities, we've talked about going to like a mid-level, like a 60% green, and then people can opt to a higher one. But I tell you, the biggest resistance we tend to get is when you tell people we're going to automatically change your electric company and you have to opt out. One thing I have been telling the public who've asked me in the meantime is they can go online and actually shop electricity prices themselves. There are different companies that they can shop, and I'm always happy to guide them toward that. But the municipal aggregation is somewhat complicated. It's not doable, but given that people sort of have choice already, I do tend to find that people resist a little bit hearing that they're going to get moved away from their energy company. So just a little background. It doesn't mean it's not doable, just to give you a little background on what we've hit so far.
And since we are a finance committee, there is one other aspect to this, and again, you have to believe in the power of the competitive marketplace and aggregating all this to we're bringing you 5,000 accounts, not just 5, and so there's some value and efficiencies that get passed along in the price. But usually there's a small payment, it's not huge, but maybe 1/10 of a cent or something per kilowatt hour. So there is a piece that does come back to the community as a payment for revenues that come in. And you might say, oh, we're taxing you again, but if you're getting a lower rate because of the program than you otherwise get on your own, the fact that there's a little bit coming back as a payment to the town as additional revenues, you shouldn't mind, because you're paying less overall and we're getting a benefit there. So that's the other piece of that, why some communities do use the municipal aggregation. One, because despite the issues that Robin raised there, you can opt out. We're making a choice for you. We think it's better for you, but if you don't like it, you can opt out. But you're asking a resident to take an action to opt out. You're hoping that by doing this, we're doing something that's better for them than their do-nothing case. But there is a revenue stream that does come back to the community as well.
I was hoping, because I took the National Grid a while back for my own electricity, right? And I thought we might be able to piggyback off the town's usage. And I talked to Rob and C, I guess, on it, and that wasn't feasible. It didn't seem like it. So that was another avenue, like if we could possibly feed off of the town's town's usage itself. But to Robin's point here is that I went back, and if you go to National Grid, they'll give you a list of customers, third parties. You still stay with, as far as the services are concerned, and billing and everything's transparent. There's no difference, but you can save 50% of the electricity from the third party, and you can sign a contract for forever. So maybe educating, if you want to help out, we can immediately educate, townspeople. That's a fast way to go without committees, approvals, green, and everything else associated with it. I mean, you could do that tomorrow, anybody in
Yes.
this room, tomorrow, like one phone call. I'd be more than happy to take your business.
And I think I put it on my Facebook page too, that list of competitive companies that you can buy your electricity through. I will tell you, there is a small revenue stream that does come in, but we would actually have to have a dedicated staff person for a while, at least to get the program up and running. So there's a cost too, so it probably would offset, but that's just something to keep in mind. Again, it's not a non-doable thing. I think the question is whether or not, some of those things we've talked about are a road we want to go down. But in the short term, absolutely, Ken is right. There's no reason not to encourage people to shop a price and to choose their own level of green, which is sort of a very personal decision too.
I did talk to Randy Becker, who's affiliated with Webster's board, and he was telling me that they were saving, this is their 5th year in their program. Okay. And he said that they're saving about 30% right off of that, off the top, that they've seen a 30%. They said they're moving forward with it this year and next year. They're trying to get 3 years out on it now. And it says it's a little hard to try and figure everything out, but I think they've done very well with it. The other thing is too that it probably wouldn't pay out very well, but Charter Spectrum, for groups, they will give you a better rate. So Jim and I, we live in a condo complex. We have 33 units, and everybody's paying around an average of $200 a unit. And they came in with premium, not with any premium channels, but like HBO, but everything up to that, and internet for $100 a month per unit, which was a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
So if you just cut your TV out and say, I'm just going to go with, say, YouTube TV. YouTube TV is going to cost you, I don't know, $40 a month or something, and then you still got to pay the $80 a month to Charter, because you're not bundling anything. So it would be an option, maybe. I don't know if how Charter's agreement with the town of Sturbridge is, but it certainly might be negotiable. I know that Overlook does the same thing. That's where I got the idea from. They actually have a division that just handles it. And we used at the hospital, we used Competitive Energy. Was it Competitive Energy that we used? Yeah, it was Competitive Energy.
Industrial aggregation group of hospital plus manufacturers who use direct energy, who use several others. This was right after deregulation back in the early 2000s. We saved a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Industrial, Sturbridge, Southbridge, major manufacturers plus the hospital. A lot of money.
So they're almost all like monopoly agreements, where you agree with a third party to take over some function of your town, and for a lower cost negotiated across the whole basis.
We used to consult, did all the negotiating and aggregating, just to make sure that our profile is very attractive. It's 7/24 operation. And for instance, fiber optic companies are operating heavily in the night, so they have spread over the 24-hour period, which is very attractive. The national grid doesn't care, because all they do is buy and sell energy. They're not making anymore, so
I used to run the portfolio for them, so yes, they don't care.
they don't care.
They're told to get out of that business. It's just here for those who haven't quite figured out how to go find their own supplier.
Pass through price.
All right.
To save us money.
I didn't mean to sidetrack us because we're busy talking topics, but I was just curious about how that whole thing worked. So what I was trying to do while we were talking is go through and kind of aggregate these things. What's me use that word?
You touched on the electric, I would do anything, I got waiting Commissioner Britton, and my rate went down about a third.
Yeah.
And when there's a buyout, you want to get out of it, you have to pay a certain buyout. I saved that the first month. Buyout, my savings the first month was what it cost me to buy out the first time. So there's deals out there, Constellation, Direct Energy, there's several.
Yeah, the company will Inspire, yeah.
You don't need a group to do that.
No.
So I have basically 8 topics that were suggested, and if I'm missing one, shut up, so I got the buttress, basically training for new board and committee members, so they're get a little more familiar with how municipal government works. The municipal electrical aggregation discussion we should have had. Tech foresight, analyzing grant consequences. There was one that was called outside factors. There's one that was suggested about looking at the effects of a split tax level or split tax rate. And for those of us who've been here a very long time, we had a split tax rate from fiscal year 2005, and it was unified again in fiscal year 2010. There's a revalue or look at user fees and making sure they effectively cover the costs, and then more general discussion on the use of free cash. Anything anyone feels like they want to take on, write a little paragraph or two.
So I guess my question is, we went from 0 to 1, now you've got 8. I think we're getting too far. Can we narrow this down to maybe a couple of topics
with
that we don't
whatever
lose
you wanna
people's,
do.
whatever?
Yeah,
And
whatever
then
you
we
wanna
can
do.
figure out where to go? And can I guess if I'm going to keep going, let me comment on the split tax rate.
Sure.
I understand the concept. It's a discussion the Board of Selectmen have every year when they set tax rates. I think that's a topic that's outside of our lane, right? It's up to the Board of Selectmen and working with the
I
assessors
am
there
certainly
to
not
set a
comfortable
tax
with-
rate. And, other than, hey, let's tax businesses more because it's cheaper on residents, you got the other side of, we're going to drive businesses out of here, and some of them can't quite afford that. So that's an issue that I think the elected officials in the town have the responsibility of doing through a public hearing process every year when they go through and set those tax rates. So,
Right, I guess with this point of this whole section, though, I'm not saying, advocating we take a position to do one or the other. It's to, educate people that happen, because not everyone knows that tax rate hearing, I think it happens in late August, early September, and that's one of the factors that is discussed about what's the split factor you want to take?
So,
Yeah, actually, they
so
have to
2
vote, I
points.
believe, don't they?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Each year.
2 points. I completely agree on limiting the number. And to the point that these are things to consider for people to be aware of. What was proposed was not that. It took positions as to almost go
did
to
it?
recommendations. And so, if it's something about the town should be aware of these things and
That's
pros
the
and
whole point
cons,
of it, yeah.
yes. But again, I think a number of the things that were submitted were as if we were taking a position as to what should be done, so.
No, definitely this section is more like, you should be aware that we've uncovered this issue, and you should be educated about it, and
And even with that, I do think bringing it to a workable number as opposed to 8
No,
is reasonable.
or I'm not going to disagree with that either. I just happen to put the ones that were sent, trying to put it.
That's your job. Well
and I
done.
think the training one was good. I think it's similar to something that came up. I know it must be more than 2 years, obviously. But I guess on that one, we go through some of these budgets, and there are departments that have training line items in there. So it's not like it's something new. It seems like a lot of departments have it. Do the selectmen have it for new members? Maybe not, or select board, but,
I'm thinking it's
they do
more for
whatever.
like people like us who
Right.
get appointed to
Volunteers.
boards and
Yeah.
committees.
But that goes back to, if you look at the finance committee thing, we don't have a training budget in there for new members, and we don't really talk about, where are the, where's the, appropriate MMA conference for finance committee members that new members could be aware
There
of to
actually
attend.
is
and
one.
go do that.
The
I
Associated
know, but
Town
we don't
Finance
talk about it, we haven't really
Yeah.
spread that around.
We haven't in a while, you're
Ken
right.
probably doesn't know about it, I've been here for a while, I kind of know what's out there, but, here's the
Actually,
information,
went to
so.
one of their meetings.
Yeah, because other than your ethics training, you
And we don't
get
even have
anything.
training in our budget here. So we're talking about that, yeah, we're the committee that has got a 0 line item for that.
No, it's a fair point.
I think in the guide, the handbook, it basically said the senior people, the FinCom should, for the newcomers, kind of get them and bring them along as far as, which is, it's been happening, trust me, I stubbed my toes a few times. So I'm learning on the job, if you will. But the point of the book was, and I don't know if we use this or which one is relevant, but the one, what I was given here, said that senior members, for newcomers, should be working with them so they understand how things work and alike. And that makes good sense to me, so I think we should start here too, to go along. So it is published that this is the way it's supposed to work. If you don't like the way it's set up, that's fine too, but that's the way it was published.
Kevin, could I just comment?
Yes, please, Barbara, go ahead.
So one, I would point out, the Finance Committee does have a line item in their budget for conference registration. You just haven't used it for a number of years. And also, the boards and committees, Conservation, ZBA, Planning Board, Board of Selectmen, there's money for all those committees to go to trainings. So if you're thinking that they don't, that's not accurate. They do.
Okay, I mean, that's kind of, you know.
I think too, I would just say this, I have over the years, so the Finance Committee handbook is not, it's not updated every year, but every time that I think it's been at 2 or 3 times that I remember sending updated documents to everyone. I think probably the issue is more that, you know, it's not shared with new members when they come on board. And, you know, if that's something that you want us to do, as opposed, I mean, I know you guys are volunteers, so I totally respect that. I just need to know, like, where, you know, what the expectation is.
No, that's
but
okay.
I can definitely moving forward, as there's new members, forward that type of information to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a.
I know you
that
sent it
should
out,
also
didn't you
be,
send
and if
out
you're-
that just earlier this fiscal year? I think everyone got a copy of it.
Yeah, and that was because I had gotten something that, you know, came across my email that it had been updated. And so I reached out and got the updated copy for you all. But I'm just saying, in general, when new members come on board, I guess I expect that they're getting it from the chair. But what I'm saying is, if that's not the case and you want me to do that going forward, I'm happy to do that. But also, as far as you guys go, you should be getting emails when there's different, so the Association of Finance Committees does have meetings.
I don't get it.
And I know, I mean, long ago, I remember Kathy Neal went to a meeting, it was at the Host.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but
I think it was
Kathy,
when I
I'm
first
sure
came on.
remembers. So I don't know if you guys are getting those emails, but if you're not,
Right.
I'm happy to arrange that you do with that association.
Yeah, that would be good, because I definitely not. Like, I get was it the DLS ones and all that? I send that to everyone when they come out, but I don't get anything from the Association of Town Finance Committees.
All right, are you getting the emails for like the Beacon and City
Yes.
and Town?
I get City and Town, I don't get the Beacon.
Okay, all right.
City
so
and Town
I'll
gets
try
sent
to-
out to everyone when they show up.
I'll try to deal with that so you guys are getting it. Because I think those things in general are very helpful for training, sometimes more so than going to an actual meeting, but just keeping up with changes in, you know, different aspects of municipal finance.
Actually, the whole DLS website has a wealth of articles and
Yeah.
trainings and all, yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's not that hard to find.
They
them,
have
really.
they now have a YouTube channel, which
Yeah.
is very informative.
Yeah, you should, yeah, anybody interested in municipal finance should go on the DLS. Sometimes it takes a little bit to, you know, get it really into it, but they do have a lot of stuff a lot of, all the aspects of municipal finance, yeah.
Larry?
Kevin, when it comes time to put a bow on the book, you have my proxy for what you include and exclude and the wording of whatever you include, if anything. in the issues. You have my proxy.
Thank you. I would like, if someone has something they feel strongly about, to do it, because I'm still writing the first part.
Oh, as far as anything I feel strongly about, I've read everybody's contributions. Analyzing grants' consequences is of particular interest to me, that I think we should throw that out to the town, for whatever
Okay.
that's worth. If you have to narrow
Just
things
as it's
down.
written right now? Or would you like to
Well, I
massage
could,
it some?
I could wordsmith it a bit. But
Okay,
that's
that would
one, like, if you were gonna try to whittle down the 10 down to something more manageable, I personally find that that is of consequence.
I think that's a good one, too.
Which one is that? Apologize.
Analyze,
One of the emails that Kevin sent out, it's an attachment of an email exchange between Kevin
Larry.
and Larry.
It's
It
analyzing.
has the
grant
producing a
consequences.
policy on technology foresight, which Josh Hawley and
Okay.
Senator Schumer are doing right now, which that's odd, strange bedfellows, but, no, artificial intelligence and its effect on voting, so that it's facing everybody, but as far as what is important to Sturbridge, I think the analyzing grants, but it can, so it's in an attachment on one
I
of the emails.
just saw a copy of it, thanks.
Not that the other two in this particular attachment or anybody else's weren't interesting, but.
Okay. I mean, even if we attach one, something is better than others. I always feel we're adding benefit when we're trying to make people.
And I think analyzing the grants, because precisely what it says, it sounds great and it's free money, but then what do you do?
Yeah. All right. If that's where we're at as far as people want to do. I will try to write something out, send it out, because I still need to get a page count, because when I add in that appendix with the warrant change, I'm sure my page count's going to go up a third anyways.
Charter.
The charter, I'm sorry, yeah. The charter changes.
That's about 13 pages.
Yeah, and what am I? I'm at 33 right now in the annual, and the special's only 4, so it's 37. The line item budget's always 17, so 54, and then, work it up from there. So we'll probably get close to 100 pages, easy.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead, Ken.
I was gonna, well, besides, but are we gonna have another meeting? Maybe we talked about last year, a meeting, are we gonna have, so some of the topics in some of these suggestions are probably, like we said, we don't want 8 or 10 on there, but I think it's worthy of a discussion amongst ourselves to say,
Well, I think Barbara talked about trying to do something in the late summer again. That didn't happen last year because she just didn't have any office help. And that maybe this year we can try and do that late summer. And Barbara, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I thought I remembered hearing you say that, but it could have been a pipe dream.
No, I'm happy to do that, and let's pray that I don't have the same situation going forward. So yes, I'm happy to do that.
Was that his question, or was his question, are we gonna meet between now and then?
well, I
to
think
kind
that,
of
like, for instance,
boil down
topics
your-
on
your
commercial
topics?
versus residential, we could probably spend, hours on it, and Jim provided something which was nice, and it showed that in 2005 to 2009, there was a differential, anywhere from between 42-58 split, 46-54, then it stopped, and then it started again in 2013 and 14, 47-53 differential, and then 2015, it went back to parity. So my question is, did it work? Why didn't it work?
Online, I found it, I printed
Yeah.
it, I sent it.
We only split once, though, and went back hollow.
What's the last 20 years?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. Barbara, you remember us splitting the tax rate twice?
More than that.
No, I only remember once.
I only remember it once, too, 2005 through 2009 were the years we split the tax rate.
And I wasn't on the finance committee, I came on after.
I can't hear Jim.
That's what I found online.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the question would have been, it's like, well, what happened? Did it work? Didn't it work? What was the result? Why one year you did it and the other year, and then you went back to it, then went back again? These are things we can talk about, but it's,
It's simple. It's simple. If you're an elected town official who's making these decisions, you like to say, I want to keep the rates low for residents who vote, and I want to send to the businesses. But the businesses who employ people in town, do have, some concern about that as well. How much of the burden are they shouldering versus, for the town's budget versus the services that they actually take versus residents in there. You think every business is making a ton of money and we can just keep taking money from them, but, it puts a pressure on them. So there's that balancing act, and that, as an elected town official, you're trying to go through and find that right balance of, I want to save money for residents and I want to stick it to a business. But, if I start driving businesses out of here and that starts fading away, then, now we're shouldering the piece over here. So become an elected town official, and then you can have that debate at the town meeting and figure out, which side I want to come out on here.
In the major segment of that business, restaurants, hotels, they generate the excess tax revenue to get that, and that comes back to us. So
Hotel taxes, we're getting money that way, yeah.
making it difficult for them. That might decrease that tax revenue on the sales tax, and result in us getting what's back. That we use.
But those are the businesses that are allocated.
So the question would be, if somebody analyzes it going back these years, did that happen or didn't happen? It's a concept, but.
So we take that to heart, we want to discuss that with Bob, and make sure that checks accurate.
Yeah, I don't think it is. That's why I'm questioning it too.
My point, I guess I'm saying, these are type of subjects that probably would be, if Barbara arranged that meeting, I think the user tax, as far as I was concerned, is something to talk about. Free cash is something that's probably not going to be resolved tonight. I think it's important for this committee, as committee, to do more analysis along those lines, if these are important topics, amongst, ourselves, and obviously in view of public, and alike. But that's my point, is I think these are things that I think this committee could add some value to, and for the sake of helping the town people and reducing taxes if need be.
I don't disagree, and that's what the off-season discussions were intended to cover.
Right.
I think the intent here wasn't necessarily for your consideration to bring a particular opinion to folks. It was to kind of tee up and tease some items that people in town should talk about, think about, and, if there's some traction and interest for them to raise the issue so that, appointed and elected officials in town can be aware of, concerns and desires and wishes of the community as they perform their roles.
Yeah.
I think that if you raise taxes to business, and the business are supported by the community, that the community's paying for the tax increase anyway in charges that's going to cost them. In other words, if I have a business and I used to sell something for 20 cents and now I got to bring it up to 25 cents, the consumer's going to pay the extra debt that the business has anyway. So I don't know, maybe some larger manufacturing like G&F or what's that called now over there? And I keep thinking it's the old, on Hull Road.
Oh, OSF?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
OFS?
yeah. I keep thinking what it was years ago, and it's Spectran, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I know that was coming out, but I was like, no, it's not that.
I see that in my world in electric utility projects, right? You see the electric company coming down, they're doing some infrastructure upgrades, and, community says, while you're there, fix this, fix that, because you're impacting along the way. And they tend to think, well, it's coming out of your profits. You guys make billions of dollars, it's coming out of your profits. No, it's going to the cost of the project that I'm doing, which then gets rolled back into ratepayers. So you think you're getting something for free, but it's rolling right back the other way.
At the time, I thought it might have been it was an interesting experiment. It didn't work, and I don't remember all the details, but I do remember one of the drivers. At the time, Tom, that was around the time period that, what's the Walmart Plaza called? Center at Hobbs Brook came online. And Tom Button, who was the chair, who was the police chief at the time, had done a study, and it said 60% of all of his calls for service went to the center at Hobbs Brook. There was that little study, so, yeah. So it was just an interesting, that impact of that thing coming in, that said 60% of the police budget was going there. But go ahead.
I'm curious, in addition to our statutory assignment about recommendations on all the warrant articles and the budget, and doing the legwork in order to make the recommendations, and the issues neutrally presented generally, Are we edging toward assigning ourselves to become the town's think tank? Shall we get together at the end of the summer and decide a few things?
It's a good point. It's a fair
Well-
point, but maybe that's what's happening.
That, if it is, let's do it deliberately, knowingly. Let's not tiptoe in and one day look around and say, huh, are we over our head? Are we embarrassing ourselves as a committee when we sally forth and somebody who really knows the topic in any given topic, in one sentence, takes the legs right out of the Finance Committee, and that casts a shadow on everything else we do.
I'm with you. I would think that the off-season discussions are relative to things within our lane. Issues relative to the finances, making sure we understand it, make sure we understand some of the nuances of these funding mechanisms so that we're making the right financial recommendation for folks in town as we're going through the process, not to get into other topics outside of that, the finance matters there that are under the purview of other committees and boards over there. So, yeah, I think we should frame our off-season discuss stuff relative to, finances and recommendations relative to finance matters.
Well, since it's very hard to find a free lunch, it may be free to you, but somebody's paying, then will we need a tighter definition than related to finances? Because everything is related to finances.
Agreed. We'll see how those go and kind of keep them relevant.
And I think the world's bigger than this room, so if there was a topic that we thought was relevant to the financial well-being of the town and townspeople, there's nothing that precludes us from bringing an expert in, is there? I mean, say, come out and join the meeting, this is very important, and we don't have the expertise, but it's important to us.
Well, yeah, sure. You want to pay for the expert? I mean, where does the money come
There's people that
from?
probably could volunteer, or quite frankly, if it was important enough, I think we should pay for it if it was important enough. If it's not important, then we shouldn't bring the person in to begin with.
So we're sort of self-appointing ourselves. How about the selectmen self-appoint themselves to say, no, you won't have at the Finance Committee anything to do with zoning. If we can be a think tank, they can be a think tank.
I think there's you gotta be practical, obviously. There's a big spectrum between think tank and practicality. I mean, there's not a 0 and 1, I don't think.
When one is an advocate, everything is practical.
Yeah. Well, when I look at some of the stuff of the manual, for instance, I was looking, and it says the budget before the town meeting is the Finance Committee's. It's our budget. I don't think anybody in this room came up with 5.4% that I know of. We're defending it, we're getting the information in, but I don't think anybody said, now there are towns that say, as a Finance Committee with maybe a little bit more, say, teeth, that would say, you departments, the budget this year is 2.5%, and anything above that, you have to tell us why, and we'll agree or disagree. That's a little bit, all I'm saying is there's a lot of different ways to approach and a lot of different angles. I'm not saying they're right, I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm not saying they're good for Sturbridge or not, but I think these are things that we could, explore, maybe doing things a little differently along those ways. That's all.
Well, there are two teensy tiny little positions in the table of organization. One's called town administrator and the other's called finance director.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we just get a great big eraser and get rid of those positions?
Of course not.
Well, then what is your point, sir?
The point being is, we as a team, my take with the TA and the finance director, and from down here, I'm impressed that they're here every single step of the way, because we're part, I understand the checks and balances, which is good, so they've done a good job, and I'm not just saying that we're in town, okay? One thing that is a little confusing to me is you have the Board of Select, and if you look at the manual there, it's they're supposed to be heavily involved, and we're supposed to be heavily involved with them along the budget process. This is something that eludes me a little bit, because I haven't had any exposure other than one meeting. So now the question is, should they be more involved? Shouldn't we be more? As far as town administrator and finance director, they were lockstep with us all the way, so they're doing a great job as far as I'm concerned.
I think, though, that,
That's a relief.
well, I mean, that guide is there, it's not the Bible. I mean, things here, I mean, every town probably has their own little idiosyncrasies about how these things work. Ours has always been two separate lines, where the only common points are the town administrator and the finance director. The Board of Selectmen go their way and make their recommendations in the line item budget, and their warrant articles, and it's reflected in our book, and we do our due diligence, do all the legwork that Larry likes to point out, and making sure we understand the budget, and we may come to the same agreement, or we may not, because I think I pointed out before, there was one year where they went with a higher COLA than we did, and, we went to the town meeting with a difference in COLA in the line item budget.
Generally speaking, we're pretty consistently close.
Yes, oh yeah, we're not.
And I look at our position as being more to stimulate thinking and to be advisory and to make, just to stimulate thinking, bring up different topics. But what it basically comes down to it, what is selecting puts the warrant together.
Yes.
They develop the part, the TA, the budget. And the townspeople vote on the budget. And even though we can make a recommendation, they can stop every line at town meeting on that budget and say, hold, hold, hold. So what we say and what the selectmen say is all secondary to what the townspeople say on that Monday night in June.
You're right.
Right. And it goes back to what are the roles? And in my point, I go back to Board of Selectmen or the elected officials. They're responsible for running the town on a day-to-day basis, not us as the finance committee. They have to meet the needs of the voters who put them into office. They use the town administrator, they use the finance director, they use the other staff that they have in order to deliver those services and expectations of the voters and the community. And our role isn't to get in there and worry about all the details. It's to be more the checks and balances and the overview to see if it kind of makes sense and, if we can afford it and how we're going to fund some things, or do they make sense? So it's not, we're into the weeds and into the details and controlling all the numbers. It is a high-level review of, is the overall budget kind of makes sense? I realize you guys want to bring forth, $65 million next year to fund all these things, but we really don't have the finances to do it. Here's a recommended number. And then to provide the checks and balance of these things kind of make sense. This one's a little too far off or whatever.
You're the voice of experience because you used to be a selectman. And you know that the selectmen initiate and the finance committee reacts.
I think we have to keep in mind that one of the responsibilities of this committee is our fiduciary responsibility to make sure.
You got it? Yes, I'm not. I'll be.
Their own self-interest and whatever the other is.
Where are we going to go next?
Right.
We eliminate any amount of self-interest that we're trying to influence anything we do.
All right. All right, so I think what we've got is what we're going to move forward with, right? With the report basically is going to be my summary section, and everyone can feedback, and Lee and Larry's combined.
I'm just going to wordsmith what Larry did.
Sure. That'd be
I'll
great.
send something tomorrow or Saturday morning. Is that soon
Perfect.
enough?
Yeah, well, because I still have to, once I figure out the number of pages, then that's when I can go to the printer and say, okay, here's how many pages you're gonna need, what's it gonna cost me to put it together? Because that's the big part of the whole thing, how many pages is it when they fold it together?
Did you find a printer?
No, not yet. Oh. I'm going to the one, well, I still have a budget, so I'm going to the one in Southbridge again first and see them. It's next year where I don't have a budget.
Send you choice of words.
So, we don't have any meeting minutes, correct? So we're good. We can skip that part. Old business, anybody? Oh, Joe, I thought you were gonna bring something up there for a second. Okay,
I'm down for the night.
all right. New business? Public access? I think we had our public access. Okay, Lee.
Move to adjourn.
There you go. It's at 8:54. Do we have a second? Second. Mike, all those in favor?